we are pleased, like I said, to have you here with us for tonight. If you've got questions for any of the speakers, please go ahead and put that in the Q&A portion, as you can see down below. Um, whoops, that's where you should ask questions tonight. Please do not use the chat function this evening. I do have it disabled or only to us as speakers. So it's really beneficial if you could just put those in the Q&A section, and that's where I'll help monitor and send those onward to our speakers. Okay. So we have had a busy spring. Even back in December, we had an offering for all of you to tour our new meat science animal biologics building. We also had roaming the rumen in January. We had feeding and caring for swine in February. We had a nice live and carcass evaluation with some lamb cookery in March. In April, we were in the dairy facility here on campus to work through the use of technology and computers and sensors in animal and dairy sciences. And then here tonight is our last one on marketing your livestock project. So if you are looking for educational credits for this evening, I put that also in the chat, and I'll do it again here once I turn this over to the other speakers. But here is, and it was also in the email that you would have received prior for this evening. And that's where you should be having this printed and have some things jotted down from what you've gained and learned from your activity here this evening. This form will likely be required by your county fair or maybe a local livestock auction committee, just to verify that you were attending some educational opportunities within your project. So here would be a great one in which to do that. You may also have some local, might have some types of policies and requirements. So make sure you're keeping ahead of that, okay? Just to remind, yeah, all of you, you are muted. There will not be any opportunity for you to vocally or verbally illustrate any questions since there's so many that come on this evening that we are going to just keep it to the minimum through the chatting. Okay. If you want some more information about what we do here at the Wisconsin Youth Livestock Program, please go ahead and check out all of our social media and some other website and YouTube links. They're provided here. And this evening, I'll also put in the chat. Hopefully you can fill out a survey or a little evaluation on this activity. It only helps us in being able to share and provide information for you that you want to learn more about, or if we can expand on different areas that are of interest to you. So my name is Bernie O'Rourke. I'm the Extension Youth Livestock Specialist here in the Animal and Dairy Sciences here at UW-Madison. And we are going to kind of cover this topic here tonight on marketing your livestock project. I'm beginning tonight in moving through. We've got four additional speakers. We have Jeff Swenson from DATCP and Dr. Jeff Sindelar here at UW-Madison as the Extension Meat Science Specialist. They'll talk a little bit about direct marketing and some other licensing and policies that you might want to be aware of while you're marketing your livestock project. And then I've also have Mark Zimmerman, who is the swine superintendent for the Marathon County Fair, to share some things to think about in working with your county fair and the staff in preparing and kind of knowing what all those intricacies might be as you prepare for the summer. And then the last speaker I have is Jake Seiler from Seiler Meats up in Elmwood, Wisconsin, and UFO capital of Wisconsin or the world, probably the world. I don't know. We'll have to ask Jake on that one. But he is going to talk about it from a processor standpoint, what things to think about and be aware of. Okay. So we're going to move through this so we can keep ourselves on track of time. And, you know, a lot of this a lot of this here that we're talking about this evening is largely because of what happened here in March of, well, of 19, but really hit us March of 2020. And that's COVID-19. And while we're getting on the other side of it, which is super great, we really had a lot of struggles with how this interrelated with our county fairs, and how it really messed up the meat supply chain that I know Jake will cover in a lot more detail, and even Jeff can talk about that as well. But because of this, there was a lot of meat shortages. There's lots of processors that were certainly having a lot of opportunity to harvest a number of animals. And so when we talk about livestock projects, this all kind of works itself out when you're trying to find a market for your livestock project. And mostly you're all aware, and largely your markets will be through the county fair. But for some of you, that might not be the case, depending upon what your fair does. And so moving through this, who is responsible for marketing your livestock projects? And I know this might be a very simple answer, or even a question for many of you. I think through last year and through COVID, and certainly you all acquiring projects for your fair, I think it created some confusion when we weren't able to have county fairs, but certainly you all were able to purchase animals. I think there was quite a bit of confusion. And so to clear some of that up, we created this guide that I put in the Q&A section. Again, if you're wanting those links to the educational form and the guide, it's in the Q&A section on the bottom middle of your screen. So to answer the question, who is responsible for marketing your livestock project? It's you. Your family members are responsible for marketing your livestock projects, and it's not the fair. However, the fair does provide you a number of opportunities when the fair does happen. And so for some of you, your fair announcements, whether they will occur or not this year, are probably still coming forth. So go ahead and make sure you're checking correspondence from your fair. Okay. So again, marketing your livestock project, a guide for youth and families, was developed because a lot of what happened last year. Okay, so I'm going to go through these in brief, because a lot of these they're all in the guide, but I just want to go through them briefly just to make you aware of a few things, and that you might not be aware of if you read through the guide really quickly. So the first thing is, the first option that you have in marketing your animal projects is largely what you're most probably familiar with if you've been a 4-H exhibitor, or FFA exhibitor, or fair exhibitor in general. And that's going through your local fair auction. From the fair auction, animals would then go to the processor, and then the buyer would then receive those products from the processor. And that's probably the most common way of the way your project is probably going to be marketed. Be aware of the paperwork that comes from your fair, because with this type of option, there's lots of expectations from you as an exhibitor. There might be some minimum educational credit points, much of what many of you are probably attending here this evening. Many require the youth quality assurance certification. And some may require you to have a completed livestock record before the fair, or some sort of like feed record that's required of you. In addition, you may have to require or write some letters to buyers, or somehow have some buyer interactions so companies and businesses attend the fair auction. And a couple of more details as it relates to the auction. You may be limited in the amount of numbers of animals you could market through the auction. So if you show a lot of different types of species, you may only be able to sell one animal in the auction. Those rules are going to be different from fair to fair. And generally, this is sold on a price per pound type of situation. And certainly commission and expenses. My commission would be taken out to kind of cover expenses and facility improvements, and the check would come from the fair. Okay. The second option is one that would go right directly from the fair to a maybe marketing channel of some sort. And in most cases or most examples, that could be an equity livestock. Or there's other types of marketing entities throughout Wisconsin. Again, as always, be aware of paperwork and be aware of what the marketing channels might require. For example, some marketing channels may not allow you to feed Paline or Ractopamine to your pigs. There might be some other requirements related to beef or even lamb or goat. So make sure you're aware. Okay. And again, YQCA certification is likely going to be required depending on the marketing channel. And again, some sort of livestock record completion might be required. The difference in this would be most likely the check that you would get for your animal would come from the marketing channel, and animal testing could be involved. Okay. So if you are a swine person, and when I say animal testing, the swine group, if you are going back home or going to another entity that doesn't include harvest, those PRRS and PED type of testing would need to be accomplished. Okay. So we're going to move on to option 3. And option 3 is basically the where you could go home. Okay, so this would be maybe extra animals or breeding animals that would need to go home. And again, this would be something that largely you would need to be aware of the testing if you are in the swine exhibition area. Okay. And then the last option, which I'll nicely hand this over to Dr. Sindelar and Mr. Swenson to talk more about. This would be kind of lined up as what would be direct marketing, where you're not taking these animals anywhere to maybe show likely, or you just want to bring them back home from the fair and you can just sell them to a buyer who may want them processed, or maybe they want to actually just buy a ewe lamb from you that you're done showing that they want to purchase. There's lots of different kind of transactions that could occur here. And so we wanted to bring this up to you as a way of considering, because there's been a lot of movement because of COVID due to direct marketing and that shortage of meat that had been a concern earlier. So processors are certainly very full, and Jake and Mr. Swenson will talk quite a little bit about that directly. And so selling animals in this way can be a little bit more difficult. You really need to plan. You need to be prepared. Okay. And here's some marketing ideas. I know some of you that do this write some buyer letters. So here's an example of a neat one. And certainly social media and some Facebook posts were a neat way people got involved in selling their extra animals from the fairs that could not be shown last year. Okay, so just in summary, make sure you're aware and reading all correspondence from your county fair and your livestock auction committees. Certainly each fair is going to have different policies. So if you got friends in the next door fair, those may not apply to you. So make sure you're reading and acting on all of the things that come from your local fair. And then certainly market values and examples and costs are also available in this guide for you to review. But we're not going to go through that in too much specific tonight because of the time. And we just want to really give this as a quick refresher as you prepare. Okay. So I'm going to stop my share here and pass this over to Dr. Sindelar, and I'm going to make him a co-host to make sure he can share his screen. And so you should have access to that now, Jeff. And again, so Dr. Sindelar is the Extension Meat Specialist at UW-Madison, and we are pleased, as I said before, to have him and Jeff Swenson here to talk about direct marketing. All right, so are you ready, Jeff? I'll pass this on to you. Thanks for being with us tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the great lead off this morning for tonight's topic. I think it's a really excellent topic for discussion. So again, my name is Jeff Sindelar. I work at Madison. Been there for 12.5 years and do a little bit of everything, but mainly extension work. I'm going to be giving this presentation with Mr. Jeff Swenson, who is a livestock and meat specialist with the Division of Agriculture Development at the Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protections, based in Madison, Wisconsin. Jeff, do you want to say hello to the group?
Hello, everyone. I think Jeff, Dr. Sindelar is going to take the lead on the presentation, but I'm here to add any additional comments and help answer questions. So,
great. Yep, super. So this is just an overview about marketing your project animal through direct marketing channels. And there's lots of rules and regulations, just like everything in life these days. So it can be very, very confusing and cumbersome. But this really is just to kind of give you an overview of how things work. What are the main rules? And if you have questions, we'll have time for those at the end. And then we can also discuss these at another time if needed. First off, it's important to understand that there's different types of inspection that exist in the U.S., and this is very true in the state of Wisconsin. So we have the first type is called federal inspection. Sometimes it's called official, and there's some other terms. But basically, plants operate under the rules and regulations of a federal document that's based out of work from the USDA out of Washington, D.C., called the Code of Federal Regulations. And this particular section of the document, which is Title IX, gives explicit what you can and cannot do regarding meat and poultry production, processing, and so forth. Plants that operate under federal inspection have inspectors that are overseeing the food safety, the humane handling, the welfare, as well as to a certain extent the safety of the employees. Those inspectors are actually federal inspectors. So they work for the federal government. In Wisconsin, there's 27 states in the U.S. that have what's known as state inspection. So these are a host of plants in Wisconsin. There's about 250 or so of these. They operate under the same rules, same federal rules. However, in the state of Wisconsin, we have our own set of rules. So basically, the state rules are a copy of the federal rules, and then they're applied across the plants in the state of Wisconsin. That set of rules is called ATCP 55. And the inspectors that oversee the food safety, humane handling, and so forth are actually state employees. And then there's another category called custom exempt, or plants that operate under custom exemption. And these plants do not, their main focus is doing fee-for-service processing. So if I own an animal, I want that animal harvested, cut up, packaged, and all that meat comes back to me. It's not sold anywhere. That's considered a custom process, or as I've explained, or as I've stated in the slide, fee-for-service. Those plants often operate under the inspection of county, city, or local health departments.
Hey, Jeff, your slideshow is not advancing. There you go. Perfect.
Thank you. This would be a good time to, and then finally, there's another category which is very unique, and it's called voluntary inspection. So this is done for animals that aren't considered amenable. So amenable animals, according to the USDA, are beef, pork, lamb, poultry, and ractites, such as rabbits and some other smaller animals. Then there's these other animals which are considered non-amenable. So farm-raised buffalo, farm-raised deer, farm-raised antelope, all those things can also be processed under inspection, but it's done by voluntary rather than as a service by the government. This is probably a good place to stop and see if Mr. Swenson has any additional comments to add.
I don't at this time, Dr. Sindelar, and I'm watching a little bit. If any questions pop up in the question and answer period or the question and answer uh, area, so I will keep that keep an eye on that for it.
Perfect. So now that we kind of understand, the climate, what type of plants and inspection there is, now let's talk about direct marketing. So the definition of direct marketing, to me, is a unique and important linkage between the meat industry and consumers that are tasked to extend the safety and the wholesomeness of meat and poultry products to the consumers, while fostering the promotion of animal agriculture and the further development of proper in-home safety practices. So that's a really long-winded explanation, but it really means that direct marketing is a tie of animals to consumers. It's a different mechanism of animals and then meat to consumers than might be through a grocery store or a restaurant. So this is a very unique and oftentimes very special mechanism. However, there are rules, right? So here are a few of the rules that we'll go through. So if you choose to sell meat directly through an inspected establishment that's either inspected by the state of Wisconsin or inspected by the federal government, you don't have to hold any type of license, because those inspected establishments or plants are already licensed through the state or the federal government to be working with and selling those products. So basically, if you take your animals to a federal or state inspected meat establishment, you can really do with what you want with it, because the establishment, they are the ones that have the licenses. They, of course, charge you or the consumer, the purchaser, for the processing services and then any agreed upon extras. So if we have a hog processed, right, you'll have a processing fee, a slaughter fee, typically a cut fee, cutting it up, a wrapping fee, and then if you want to do some extra stuff like make bacon or pork sausage or ham, usually those are additionals. The consumer generally pays for the livestock, and it's very common for them to pay for it on a hanging carcass weight. So sometimes through a direct marketing channel, the animal might be sold before it's taken to a processor, but oftentimes it's taken to a processor, harvested, and then the weight of that carcass before it's cut up is then what the purchaser pays for. If you choose to sell meat directly from your farm or residence, so you can do this. You can take that meat, have it processed, harvested, cut, wrapped at a state or federally inspected establishment, bring that back to your home, and then you can resell that. In order to do that, you license. And then in addition to that, it's kind of the provisions of that license is that you have to have certain things in place. One is that you have to have a cooler or freezer present that is dedicated to only that product that you are direct marketing. So you can't use like your refrigerator or freezer is in your house that you might use for your family. You also have to undergo inspections from the state or the county or the city, whoever's doing it, to ensure that the conditions, the freezer and how you're handling that meat in your home ensures that it's safe and there aren't any unsafe conditions. And as a general housekeeping thing, everything is expected to be clean, the freezer, cooler, and located in areas so there's no opportunity for dirt or debris or contamination to get into the meat while it's being stored or while it's being transported in and out of the freezer or cooler. If you choose to distribute from your farmer residence for wholesale sales, so this is if you were to, instead of selling to a consumer, you maybe want to sell to a restaurant, or maybe you want to sell to a grocery store or something like that. So someone other than the direct consumer, right? That's considered wholesaling. If you elect to do that, you must still follow the rules as we previously discussed, as with that retail food license, but you also have to be registered as a distributor. This is with the state of Wisconsin. And if you use a vehicle to transport this stuff, to bring it to a restaurant, to bring it to a grocery store, that vehicle must be inspected to ensure that the meat or poultry doesn't become contaminated and doesn't get warm, right? So it's maintained in a cold or frozen state, and it's transported in a sanitary fashion. If you choose to sell at a farmer's market or through a CSA, you must have a retail food license or a mobile food license if is required if you're going to farmer's market in multiple counties. And there's some additional rules across the state of Wisconsin. Not every county is the same, but generally speaking, the vehicle that you use to transport the meat to a farmer's market or a CSA, again, just like a distributor, must be inspected to ensure that the product is safe, right? That it's not becoming contaminated, as well as it's maintaining the right temperature, either being kept cold or kept frozen. Poultry is slightly different. And poultry is very unique. Poultry actually has separate regulations at the federal government than red meat, right? Beef, pork, lamb. So here is kind of the summary of poultry regulations or poultry exemptions. So if you have less than 1,000 birds that you want to process each year, and you want to sell them at your farm or wherever you live, you can do so. However, the birds must be healthy, and they can be slaughtered without inspection or a license. Here's the key to this: less than 1,000 birds. You don't need a license, don't need inspection, but you as the owner must maintain custody of those birds until they're sold. So you can't sell them to someone else and then have them sell them. It is directly from you to the consumer, right? So if I'm the seller, I own the birds, Mr. Swenson wants to buy birds, I can sell up to 1,000 birds to him or all of his friends without inspection, without a license. That's completely legitimate. The birds, however, have to be labeled, not inspected on the packages, as well as having the name and the address of the producer, which would be me in this example, along the label, as well as a little bit more information. If you're harvesting or slaughtering more than 1,000 birds annually, then things are different. It has to be inspected, or the birds have to be processed in either a state or a federally inspected USDA licensed facilities. The birds have to be appropriately labeled, just as less than 1,000. And the producer must have a retail food establishment license and be registered as a meat distributor if you're transporting the meat from those birds to the wholesale or end consumer. And this also applies if you're selling to a farm, a farmer's market, or if you're selling to retail establishments. So less than 1,000 birds a year, no license, no inspection. Over 1,000 birds a year, absolutely. And if you plan on harvesting any birds less than anywhere from less than 1,000 or more than 1,000, as a wholesaler, they all have to go through inspected, just as the birds that are over 1,000 annually. Mr. Swenson, anything to add?
We had a couple of questions that I think would be nice to check off the list right now, Dr. Sindelar. So one was about CSAs and what that is, and I think Bernie typed in an answer in that. But CSAs, a CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture, and typically it started with vegetables, and it would be a subscription that buyers can subscribe to. They pay up front for a weekly or monthly box delivered to them, or delivered to a pickup site that would have a variety of seasonal vegetables in it. And that has branched out to meat. So people would have a meat CSA. You may drive to a population center, someplace in town once a week to pick up your meat for that month or that week. And it may be steaks, it may be pork chops, it may be ground beef, all added together. And it's a way for farmers to be able to market all of their production and the entire animal. So it does vary in what you would get in a box. And then the other question, Dr. Sindelar, was CIS, and a little explanation of that, the 27 states that have that. And I can start on that and turn it over to you. That's a cooperative interstate shipment is what CIS stands for. So in the vast scheme of things, Dr. Sindelar did a good job of saying, you know, if you meat processed at a federal facility can go across state lines. It can be sold anywhere, even internationally. Meat that's processed at a state inspected facility in Wisconsin can't enter interstate commerce. There is a caveat or another another registration, if you will, for cooperative interstate shipment. So a state inspected plant can apply for cooperative interstate shipment. If they're accepted into that, they would be able to market their meat across state lines, their products. So it's cooperative interstate shipment. They would have permission and the ability to use a federal legend on that and can enter interstate commerce. But a state inspected facility has to have that CIS designation in order to do that.
Thank you for answering those questions. The meat industry, meat and poultry industry is a very, very regulated industry, very regulated. And so there's lots of rules, there's lots of documenting, there's lots of paperwork and so forth. So to summarize, as you move forward, if you decide you want to do direct marketing, communication is really, really key. It's really important. So you should communicate, discuss with your current customers or new customers any needs or wants that they might have or products that they would like, because you can take a carcass and cut it up in a lot of different ways and do lots of different things with it. So one way to really have happy results and happy customers is to make sure that you're understanding what the customers want, what type of cuts, what size of cuts, what might be special that they haven't had before. The second really important piece of communication is with the meat establishments or the meat processors, right? They are working with you. Yes, they are making profit doing so, but they are really a partner with you. It's really important to make sure that you have a good relationship, that you have a good partnership, and you have very open communication, and that goes both ways. So you should be discussing ideas, or discussing concerns, or discussing opportunities, really understanding what that processor can do and how they can help you with your direct marketing interests. And of course, with some of these regulatory questions and licensing questions, the Department of Ag is absolutely there to help in the state of Wisconsin. And for those outside the state, you have similar Department of Agricultures in your respective states. And here's just a couple websites that you can find out more information about direct marketing.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Sindelar and Jeff Swenson. Maybe we've got a couple of questions in here. Let's see. Do you want to talk? And I was answering some questions, so I may have missed it. But do you want to talk a little bit about the on-farm processing a little bit? There's a question here on that. So I just, again, if you mentioned something on that, I apologize. But if you could answer that, I think that'd be great.
Sure, I can jump in. So on-farm processing, there's two different types. The most common is custom processing. So there's lots of small plants, not only in Wisconsin, but across the country, that will do custom processing, not under inspection. They'll come out to your farm, they'll harvest the animal, they'll load up the carcass while it's warm, they'll haul it back to their shop, they'll cool it down, and then they'll do all their processing. There's been a wave and a growing wave of mobile processing that's done under inspection. And in Wisconsin, there's a few mobile slaughter plants, so basically trailers that have been converted to being harvest floors, where they can go out, set up. They need to follow and meet the regulations, the federal regulations for food safety for harvesting, and there has to be an inspector present, and they can actually do on-farm slaughter right where you're at, but make sure that they're doing it in a sanitary and safe condition. And then those carcasses are then hauled back to a processing plant, usually chilled down, and then further processed. So there's two options. One is under inspection, which isn't too common, but there's a few out there. It's a growing industry, but it's slow. And the other, which is typically done under custom processing or custom exemption, which is I own the product, it comes back to me.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Dr. Sindelar. I think in lieu of time, I think we're just going to move over to Mark Zimmerman. Mark Zimmerman, do you? I've made you co-host, so I don't know if you have a presentation or not, but if you want to go ahead and share your screen, and we can kind of talk about how you as an exhibitor should work and engage with your swine superintendent or poultry superintendent, whomever that might be. So I think if you stop screen sharing, Jeff, I think, there we go. And Mark, if you've got a screen share, there we go.
There, I don't think I need to. All right, there. Now's that what you wanted, Bernie?
Yeah, I think so.
All
let
right.
me remove. Oh, I think we lost your screen share. Can you?
That's okay.
Okay. We can't see anything if you did have something prepared. I just want to.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
I'm Mark Zimmerman. I've been the swine superintendent at the Wisconsin Valley Fair, which is Marathon County's county fair for over 30 years. I know I'm not that old. I started as a child. My day job is I'm an agriculture education instructor and FFA advisor at Spencer High School. I have had a real passion for the livestock industry, or for the livestock project for youth. And in my spare time, I coached Skillathon, Quiz Bowl, and meets. And I'm also a parent of exhibitors. My kids have exhibited for about 15 years in beef and swine also. Just to give you a little background about how our county operates, our market animal show and sale committee is independent of the fair board and independent of the 4-H program, the extension program in our county. And we've got a really great, responsible, ambitious group of volunteers that have assembled a really great program for over 40 years. And it is the one that provides all of the leadership and the forms and the expectations for the livestock program. So that's kind of my perspective on how things work in our county. The Market Animal Show and Sale Committee has got a really great relationship with the Junior Fair Board, with Extension, with FFA advisors, and with our Fair Board as well. Now, you're thinking, well, the fair's a while away, and you surely shouldn't have to be really worrying about that yet. But probably you should at least start thinking about some of those things that you might have to do at the fair. And probably some of those things that need to be taken care of right away is make sure that you are doing a good job of record keeping of any medications that you're providing to your pigs, and also be thinking into the future, as Bernie had said about feeding ractopamine. If you think that in the end of your project that you might end up marketing your hogs through equity or something like that, then you need to make sure that you exclude that from your feeding program. One other thing that I think is really important that you probably should do now is you should probably figure out who a local veterinarian is that you can count on. You can't, it's really unfair to a veterinarian to make their first visit to your farm the first time that you need a health paper. It probably would be a lot more sensible, even while your pigs are healthy. And yes, it's probably going to be it might be a call, but if you explain to your service call, but if you explain to your veterinarian what you're doing, it might be just a nice informational call that, they might be liking to learn about your project, and you can develop that relationship with a veterinarian early on. Now, getting ready for the fair, you should be getting ready for the fair all the time, but some things pre-fair that makes your superintendents and your livestock leaders really happy is to make sure that your forms, that whatever your county requires, that you take care of those forms in an early fashion. Make sure that you check the state livestock health requirements to make sure that you've got the right kind of paperwork that you need to get your pigs, your beef, your sheep to the fair. And, we're kind of in a bit of a, you may have been in a holding pattern, and some rules may have changed, and some rules change even with our fair. We used to be a terminal show. We're not any longer. And starting last year, livestock participants could take their extra hog home with them so they could show it at other shows or have it processed in a different way. Well, in order to do that, you need to make sure that you have a PERS test. Well, you can't do that the night before the fair. You might get away with a health check the night before the fair, but a PERS test is not going to be done that quickly. So developing a relationship with a veterinarian is make sure that you can get that done in a proper time frame. Now, once you arrive at the fair, you have to keep in mind that you are the face of agriculture and you are the face of the livestock project. So, there's a lot of fun to be had at the fair, but, you need to make sure that you take care of business at the fair. Again, to keep your livestock leaders and your superintendents happy, make sure that you are raising yourself and your project up to a standard or at the highest standards that you're going to find at your fair. Spend some time in the barn by your livestock projects to answer people's questions. You might be spending some time, when you're there, you might be spending or might be visiting with young families that come through and are interested in livestock or don't have any really connection to agriculture. Or, you never know, you might have some potential buyers moving through the barn and they might like to learn about your livestock project as well. I know that's happened at our county fair. There's people that are visiting the fair, they start talking to a student or a livestock exhibitor, and all of a sudden they find out that they buy a restaurant and they'd have a great outlet for that meat, and all of a sudden they're a buyer at the fair, and they continue to be a buyer at the fair. This is also a good opportunity, to educate yourself, or early before the fair, educate yourself about what can you do with the meat from a pig. Be a knowledgeable livestock exhibitor. So if someone asks you, well, what kind of meat or what kind of cuts can I get from a pig, that you could give them really good answers to help market your pig to those potential buyers. Once you have marketed your pig, or once your animal has been sold, make sure that you do a good job of thanking your buyer. And even if it's an extra hog or something like that, make sure that you do a good job of even sending thank you to those people. Now, most junior fair rules dictate that you can't put up a for sale sign at the fair, but check what your rules are. If you're lucky and you're fortunate and you plan ahead, you may have that other hog of yours, your extra hogs or other animals that you have to sell. You might have them sold even before you get to the fair. Make sure that you share information with the purchaser of your pig, of the processor. And the processor has the buyer's information so they can get the cutting instructions that they're going to need to get those things done. Just one thing, a little extra note, if and you need to make sure that if you have an extra animal, for example, in our family, we've got, my daughter decided to raise 3 pigs this year. So we're going to have 2 pigs that we take to the fair, and one is going to go on the sale, hopefully, and the other one, the market animal show and sale will take care of making sure that other pig gets to a processor. It's got a spot held for it. But our 3rd pig doesn't necessarily have a home yet. I've already called the processor and made sure that we have a place, a date that we can actually get that pig in for processing, so it doesn't have to hang around our farm for 2 months or half a year until it's ready to go. Now, we've talked about all these things. students, this is also the biggest lesson that can be learned here also is this is a time for you to step up and grow your abilities as a young leader. You know, when it's time to do those buyer forms and when it's time to do the record keeping, you know what, that's something that you can grow your skills on. Keep those records, make sure that you're the one that talks to the buyer when it's time to fill out those buyer forms. Make sure that you're the one that is the first one to provide the thank you to your buyer, and make sure that you're the one to make sure that you share the information and the story of your project. Remember, you're always the face of agriculture, and make sure that you're always making a good impression for yourself, your family, 4-H, FFA, whatever your exhibiting organization is. Anything else, Bernie?
Excellent. No, that's great, Mark. I'm just going through the questions and there isn't too many here. I'm gonna, since we are on time here, I'd like to get Jake involved. I think he might be one of the phone callers in. Is that right, Jake? Hopefully he can come off mute. All right, if he's not able to be here, I know he was traveling back, and so I guess if Jeff and Mark can come back on with their videos, and I will get you all kind of in the front and center here, and we can go ahead and see who has questions and how we can, I got to remove a spotlight apparently. So we can see if anybody's got questions. This will be a nice thing to add or end here this evening for students. I'm going to add myself here and turn on my camera. I'm just, I know Jeff was in meetings with Jake today, but I don't know that if he had some struggles getting on tonight. Hopefully he can jump as we're going through questions. So there was one question here about establishments. What does that mean, meat establishment? So Jeff, would you like to answer that one live here with the group?
I think I beat Dr. Sindelar to unmuting. So a meat establishment really just is a meat processor, butcher shop, whatever you would want to call that, in good standing. So their licenses are in good standing with the state or the USDA. So basically a meat establishment is a fancy word, if you will, for your local butcher shop.
There's one that just came in, non-amendable animal mean. Does somebody, what do you want to, you or Jeff want to answer that one? That's a good question.
Yeah, amenable is just a definition that it's part of regulation. It's how the USDA defines what animals they provide inspection for. So it's like, it's what's in their house. So they offer inspection services for these types of animals, and they call those amenable animals. That falls in the classification of amenable. Those that are not, that are non-amenable are someone else's responsibility, and so that's how they create their. This is what we oversee. This is what we're in charge of making sure are safe and healthy for the consuming public.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that one. I'm going to hit this one to Mark. Mark, I'm sure you've maybe had this happen with your extensive WISE years. Is one student puts in here, what happens if you had a buyers lined up and they didn't show up?
Well, I've had that happen. I mean, I've had kids tell me that at the fair, and I've also had that happen to my own kids. And it does happen sometimes. Make sure that, sometimes things happen and buyers don't make it. You shouldn't necessarily make judgments about that buyer, and make sure that you don't get into a mode of harassing or pestering that buyer where, why weren't you there, kind of thing. That may be something maybe left to the adults. When I've just said that, the kids do something, maybe that's something left to the adults, where, maybe your mom or your dad can say, hey, we missed you. Is everything okay with your family, with that, what happened, or, we missed seeing you at the fair. And then, next year, if they don't they just decided not to come, then maybe that you should look somewhere else for a different buyer, a different option next year. Maybe they weren't that interested, but I guess anything can happen. You know, we've had buyers that wanted to show up, and our county actually offers a absentee bidding process. And I guess for the livestock leaders out there, it was rather successful this last year for our sale. We did have a market animal show, and we had the sale. It was a live sale, and we did have absentee bidding that was offered, and we did have bidders that took advantage of it. And it'd be hard to say. I mean, but I know some people bought animals on their absentee bid.
That's a good point, Mark. And maybe here in this time of this pandemic type of situation that we're kind of coming out of, there still might be some people that want to come to the sale. So having those options that's pretty solid. That's a good move. One other one that came through, there's a number of ones that are coming in here, and that's great, but we'll answer a couple more and then we'll move on just to finalize up here for this evening. But you know, we did talk about some of these here, but the one question I wanted to, or where was it? What if you don't have a processor near you? So I think maybe Jeff can answer this one. I know, you know, it's hard. And for some, you're traveling or may have to travel a good ways and maybe utilize processors you haven't used before just because they have space. So Jeff, do you want to talk about that a bit?
We certainly know that right now, coming out of COVID, there were some definite challenges as far as our livestock processors go. Butcher shops that slaughter are booked out well in advance, and because of that, we have had people that have needed to travel further to find a butcher shop that can accommodate them. And in some cases, there aren't many. There may not be a processor in your area. There are a couple of resources. The USDA has a list of Wisconsin processors on their website. There is a list on the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture website as far as state licensed processors. Sometimes I can't always make promises, but if someone were to get in touch with me, I may know of a processor that does have a little bit of capacity. But again, I certainly can't promise that you wouldn't have to travel a significant distance to get there.
Yeah, and I can add, there's obviously a really big problem with not enough harvest capacity in the state of Wisconsin. This is true across the country. But if you first ask, and then you might ask if you can be put on a list, because sometimes animals are scheduled out a long ways, but they're not ready when their date for harvest is up. So then there are some spots. So if you contact the processor and ask them to put you on the list, you can do this for a number of processors. If they have open spots, then they can call you and say, hey, we have something open up, do you have an animal?
Yeah, that's good. And I think, you know, it goes back to, I think what Mark and both Jeffs had illustrated, it's establishing relationships, right? So, you know, processors that maybe your family has used for a number of years may have you more of a priority and know that you follow through and know that you're committed when you reserve a spot, as compared to somebody they may or may not know. In this case, they may just forego and just not be able to accommodate. And I've also, right, I think spots for swine and beef are harder to come by compared to lamb, right? Lamb doesn't take up so much space and maybe doesn't take so much time to get done. So that might be some other things to consider too. And I know there's getting to be a lot of questions in here through about buyers. I think any and all businesses, I don't know that a lot of fairs really have like criteria as to who is considered a buyer. I think lots of relatives, grandparents, businesses that you or your family work with that are maybe agriculture based. A lot of businesses in a lot of communities are not agriculture based. And they buy from the community and support families that support them. So that might be something else to consider on how you work with people in your community, in your local county, as a family in business that you pursue. So I know some of them are being answered in here, and I know we can't get to all of them, but I do kind of want to wind us up here this evening with just a couple of things that I think you will find to be a good opportunity if you're still looking for educational credits for your fair or for your activities this summer. And that's to go ahead and all of these that we've done are in a virtual programming playlist on the YouTube channel. So if you go to the Wisconsin Youth Livestock Program YouTube, if you just go to YouTube and search Wisconsin Youth Livestock Program, all of those YouTube videos will come up. And there's a playlist that is called Virtual Programming 2021. So if you want to gain more insight, I think there was a question there, how do I become an educated exhibitor? Reviewing and gaining all of this educational content from this last year will be great and be so helpful in your learning, and also would also serve, I would think, in terms of your county programs to review some of these videos and fill out some educational forms for that. Also, we have gotten some of these things just lined up, and I'm going to make sure the date for the meats contest is correct. But if you're in 4-H and would like to become more educated and become more of a solid versed young person in the youth livestock area, 2 great events are coming up, and we're excited because we haven't been able to have these events. And so in 2021, we will have the 4-H meats contest June 14th. And that's going to be at Baraboo at the meat market there. And June 22nd is going to be the 4-H livestock judging contest, and that will be in Jefferson. So if you're interested in doing those types of things and have a team associated in your county or want to form a team, let us know. We'd love to have you. And you can sign up and register for that in 4-H online. There should be an event that comes up that you can sign up for. Okay. And as we kind of leave here tonight, I'm going to grab this evaluation link, and we really need you to fill this out and help us out related to all things education. Like if you want some more of these types of things, we'd love to do those, but we really need some insight and some ideas from you all. So I just put it in the survey right there for you to click on and go ahead and fill out. We'll also put this in an email. So all of you who have registered, and many of you have registered for many of these, we'll have a final email that comes out to you that illustrates all of the links to all of the videos and any other last connections to the evaluations that you want to share. That would be so helpful to us as we kind of plan and share out what we did this year. Okay, so I'm really pleased and thankful and grateful for Jeff and Mark for joining us tonight. I know Thursday nights are busy. They're busy in my house. People are just getting home from sporting events. So I know this recording will be used by many others who are busy this evening too, that couldn't hit it right away from 7 to 8 o'clock. We'll keep track of the questions and we'll be able to try and answer them as they come out. But certainly we appreciate you all and coming on and spending your spring with us. This again is the last event this year, and we hope to bring some things back in the fall, but looking forward to some in-person events this summer. So everybody have a great summer, end of the school year, finish strong in those academics, and have a safe and successful sports season too for those that you do that. FFA, arts, choir, band, all the things. Good luck and have a good year. All right. Take care, everybody. Good night.